ضمن برنامج ويل. برنامج ويل هو أحد المشاريع المدعومة من الاتحاد الأوروبي، واللي تهدف لتكوين شبكة تساعد في الرفع من كفاءة التعليم العالي، شبكة محلية ومربوطة بشبكة مناظرة في الاتحاد الأوروبي. هدفها هو كما قلت لكم الرفع من كفاءة التعليم العالي. تأتي ورشة أو محاضرة اليوم أو ورشة عمل اليوم ضمن سلسلة من المناشط اللي يشرف عليها مكتب التعاون الدولي بجامعة طرابلس، والتي يشارك فيها نخبة من الأساتذة. اليوم إن شاء الله حيكون عندنا ورشة عمل بعنوان Teaching Principles and Methodologies، حيقدمها دكتور ستيف وو. دكتور ستيف هو أستاذ زائر من University of Texas UT Health in Houston. ما نطيلش عليكم، نترك المجال لدكتور ستيف يقدم نفسه ويباشر في الورشة. بارك الله فيكم. شكرا.
شكرا دكتور آدم. Assalamu alaikum. Thank you all for attending the lecture today. Thank everyone for attending the lecture today on teaching principles and methodologies. As Dr. Ado said, the lecture today is part of the WHEEL project, and so I'm fortunate to be able to be a part of this. It's a much bigger effort with many other things besides just teaching. There's research, there's other parts of it, and so I just wanted to say that I'm honored to be a part of what is already going on at this university and at many other universities in Libya. And اسمحني إن المحاضرة اليوم بالإنجليزي مش بالعربي، يعني نقدرش نتكلم بسرعة بالعربي، بالإنجليزي اليوم. Okay, so today we're going to be talking about principles and methodologies for teaching, and the outline. I'll talk about my kind of an introduction to myself and my experience and where this comes from. And then I'll just get into talking about teaching methods and the principles behind them. And we'll actually do some of these methods together in the lecture hall for those of you who are here today, and also in Zoom for those of you who are on Zoom. So you are all going to be part of the activities that we'll be doing. And we're just going to practice some of the teaching methods today. So this is not just theory that's out there. We're going to be practicing them today in the lecture itself. And then I'll give some of my own experience beyond the classroom, sort of the point and purpose of our teaching. A little bit more of an introduction on myself so you know who I am. I did my undergraduate at Duke University in electrical engineering, went to the University of Minnesota for all of my graduate school, where I did my PhD in computer science and I studied natural language processing. So I used machine learning to do natural language processing. If you have any questions about those fields, feel free to ask me at some other time. I worked at Mayo Clinic, which is ranked as the top hospital in America, and has a strong research program, so I did my research there. I've moved to Oregon, and I did, let's see, how did I get this? I moved to Oregon. I'm getting some feedback here. I'm not sure how to cut that off. Well, I moved to Oregon, and I was part of a tech startup called Trapit. And I was an NLP scientist there. I went back into academia, and then I moved overseas. I worked in Addis Ababa, Ethiopia for a while, and so you'll see some of my teaching experience has that flavor in it. And I'm currently an associate professor at the University of Texas Health Science Center at Houston and at the School of Biomedical Informatics there. In late 2019, I moved to Tripoli, and right now, as Dr. Adil said, I'm a visiting professor here at the University of Tripoli, and I work with the International Cooperation Office with Dr. Adil. And one of the main things that we did is we submitted an application for a new master's and PhD program for funding from the US government to start master's and PhD program in health data science here. So I'm not gonna, this is all I'm gonna say about those fields, most of what I'm gonna say about those fields. So if you have questions about those things, feel free to talk to me afterwards. This lecture is mostly focused on teaching principles and methods. What I wanna do is say that as a way of introduction, what we're talking about today will experience some methods together, but they represent principles. And so if you, as a teacher, don't want to use the exact method that I use, that's no problem. Of course, it doesn't have to look exactly one way, but there's principles behind some of the methods that I'll be introducing to you that hopefully you can take and apply. And it doesn't mean that you have to apply every single thing. This comes from some educational research. I've linked just one article here on the slide. It also comes from my personal experience and also from the institutional program at UT Health. We have at the School of Biomedical Informatics, we have one of the largest health informatics training programs in the world. And so it's all postgraduate, it's all master's and PhD, but it's one of the largest programs of its kind. And so there's a lot of expertise there at SBMI, at my institution. Today, I've already met some people in the audience, and I know there are others online and elsewhere who are seasoned professors, who have more teaching experience than I do, who have years and years of insights to help convey to other people and that kind of thing. And today in our lecture, I hope we are going to actually be able to benefit from that kind of expertise in the room as well. So don't treat it as I'm the expert here and I'm just giving you knowledge, but actually that we are sort of inductively growing and learning together. I'm not an educational specialist in my field. My PhD is in computer science. It's not in education. And so this is not my field, but I think as somebody who actually needs to teach and apply things in teaching, it actually allows us to be able to say, well, the kinds of methods and the kinds of techniques and the kinds of learning that came from the educational research, it should be applied in teaching from all types of subjects. And so as a practitioner, these kinds of methods, these kinds of principles apply to me, and they apply to all of us regardless of what our expertise is or what field we're teaching in. Does that make sense? All right. Okay. So let's dive into some teaching methods, okay? And to do that, we're going to start by looking at syllabi, the syllabus. And so what I want you to do is, oops, this is the wrong screen. There we go. Up at the top here, you have a link, polev.com/StephenWu764. If, for those who are listening online, please, and also for those who are sitting here, if you have a mobile device handy or a laptop or something, please go to this website. And I'd like, especially those online, I'd like you to enter your ideas here. What are the things that are essential to put into a syllabus? Okay, on this particular question, you can enter as many suggestions as you want. So, and you'll also be able to upvote. If somebody else wrote something that you already said that you wanted, you can upvote and say, oh, I liked what they said, and give a thumbs up on that, okay? So go ahead and go to polev.com/StephenWu764. All of the questions that I'll put up on the screen are going to be at the same link, so it'll just update that web page. So go ahead and log in on a mobile device, or if you're online on your computer or wherever. And as soon as you start making responses, we'll start seeing them up here. So tell me, what are things that are essential to put into your syllabus? Many of you have already been teaching for years, and you've already put things into syllabus. So I'll give you about a minute of, or 30 seconds of silence, and let you guys think and enter some information. Yes. Okay. Yes. Sure.
They cannot just click on the.
That's right. You can't just click on it. Sorry about that. Yes, you have to type it in. So yes, it is being copied. Small. It doesn't matter. Okay, so that should help. So I'll give you guys 30 seconds of silence and go ahead and enter. You have to hit submit. After you write something, hit submit, and then it should show up. Huh? I don't have it. Maybe someone else can send a message to everyone. Yes? Yeah, it's right here. This is the link here. It's now, the link is now in the chat. Yes. So let's get some feedback. I'm not seeing any responses up here. So real quick, who has been able to log into the website and look at the interface for submitting responses? Has anyone been able to log in and do that? The connection is too bad. What about those on Zoom? They're not able to log in?
The website will be down.
I'm sure the website is not down. It's recording right now. So here, I'm going to I'll log in here. So I think it's worth it for us especially because we have people online right now. It's worth it for us to pause in the lecture and wait and make sure that people are able to give responses. Otherwise, the experience online will be very, very difficult. We could do this exercise without technology at all in the classroom, but without the technology, the people online won't be able to participate. So I have this on my phone on Libyana LTE, and so I'm going to say professor's name and submit, and it's there. So just go to that website, enter that, there's a response, and then you should be able to get a response there. Yes. Oh, okay. You just all right, we're starting to get some responses. Yeah, okay. maybe I did. Sorry. Okay. Well, we have a few responses on the poll here. The connection's not good. Okay. Okay. Just especially the people online, I'm concerned because we can very easily. I can just ask you, and then you can tell me things, right? But online, people are not able to. Yeah, can you just get another phone and you can write to everyone from London. Okay. Okay. For those of you who are here, I've shared my hotspot. If you want to use mine, my internet is working fine. It's Steven's iPhone SE, new SE or something like that. And the password is ABCDEFGH. Okay, so feel free to use my hotspot and sign in on the next activity if you'd like. ABCDEFGH. Okay. Okay. So it looks like we're getting a few more responses. That's great. So yes, thank you guys for your patience and waiting for this. So we have a few different ideas here, references. I'm assuming that's references to other kinds of work, like some of the sort of source material, maybe books or journal articles, things like that. Table of contents, yeah, giving an outline of what's going to be said. References, course outlines. I put professor's name here, so okay, good. And I want to ask another question. Which of the following is the best analogy for a syllabus? Which of the following is the best analogy for a syllabus? Is a syllabus like a contract where you say, here are the terms of my classroom, and these are the terms. This is what you get when you come into my classroom, and you're going to sign off on it, and this is a contract? Or is it like a dictionary where it's like, if you need to find any information about the class, you go to the syllabus? Or is it like a map where you say, okay, here's thanks for bearing with us. Usually we're not doing, like in most classes, you wouldn't have a mixed online and live kind of setting. We're trying to make it work for both. So thank you for your patience in dealing with that. So, okay, we do have some responses to this activity. Yeah, I think the connectivity is, I don't know why this is not working. Let me just start this over too. Okay, well, in the meantime, I'd like you to look at a second syllabus, this one on the right here, and tell me what you think about it. On the right. Okay, so give me.
It's very disciplined and
Okay.
gives more details. So the student now, they know what they are going to do exactly with their limited time.
Okay.
Sure. So I think it's very useful for the student to get all of this information about the course before they are starting to lecture the course.
Okay, so it's more detailed. Okay.
And divided firstly paragraph, okay, information,
Yes.
personal information, emails, and then time of lectures, and then firstly.
Okay.
Step by step.
Yes, so step by step in different categories of information are categorized for you with headings. Okay, that's good.
For me, I mean, I consider myself as an old-fashioned academic
Uh-huh.
So the syllabus for me is just description and details and gives details directly related to the topic.
Uh-huh.
But here I can see more information about the lecture and the place where the lecture can take place and
Right.
more details as a description rather
Yes.
than just table of information related to the subjects that we are going to cover during the course.
Right.
So
Yeah.
here, according to my experience in the University of Tripoli, we prefer to go directly to the description or details in
Yes.
table.
Yes.
It's like one way to describe the syllabus. I'm not sure.
Yes. So Dr. Adil is just saying that in this, in a traditional way, you mostly just give content. What is the content that will be covered in this class? What we're seeing in this example here is with this particular sample B syllabus is that it is giving more information about the environment of learning, right? So
Student good communication with the
So some of the things that people said about the first one, about syllabus 1, was description, that this is the course, there's an outline. Okay, these are some of the responses that people gave for the first one. For the second one, I don't think we got to get the online responses, but you heard some of these ideas. So what I want you to answer now is, which syllabus would be more helpful to a student? Which one do you think would be more helpful? Syllabus B? Okay, syllabus B would be better than syllabus A. And there may be other responses. There may be a different way to structure a syllabus that's even better. But my point here is that not all syllabi are created equal, right? You can do a better job at setting students' expectations at the beginning of a class for the content, not just the content, but what they expect to get out of it, how they expect to get it, and that kind of thing. So, and what do people here online say? Well, again, I think the connection is not great, and I'm not able to see the responses, but that's fine. So, okay, let's move on. Sorry, we did go through a lot of things here. What you've seen me trying to do in the lecture today already is that I'm trying to teach interactively to engage attention, right? This is not just me standing here and lecturing for 30, 40 minutes straight, but I'm asking you questions, asking for your responses, and I'm trying to engage your attention. Now, the activities that I've been designing, the questions that I've asked you, the things that, these align with the learning objectives. I'm trying to convey, okay, what are some of the teaching methods and how should you do a syllabus, that kind of thing. And so the activities that I've chosen align with the electives. It's not just a random game that you're playing for fun. It actually allows you to go deeper. The game that you play or the question that you ask allows you to go deeper into a particular topic and to allows you to convey your information better. However, once you start doing interactive teaching, you open yourself up to some difficult things like classroom management. That's what we're experiencing today. We have an online component and we have this component here. And so you have to learn how to manage a classroom if you're going to teach interactively. And it can be a challenge. So for me, like just today, when the internet isn't working or something like that, you have to be able to think on your feet and to know, manage the classroom environment, even if things don't all go according to plan, because they won't all go exactly as you planned if you do allow interaction. Somebody starts talking and they're talking for 5 minutes, you have to learn how to cut them off gently. What is it? Something like that. Like something like that. Okay. The best practices are to be prepared for your activities. You have to think ahead in advance what you want to talk about, and you have to be clear what the objective of that question was or that activity was. And the best practice is in a lecture to have some kind of interactive activity at least once every 20 minutes. You think that playing games or something like that is just for kids, but in educational research, even adults' attention span is about 20 minutes. And so, yes, so every 20 minutes. So you lecture for 20 minutes, you talk for 20 minutes, and then you have some kind of activity. Okay, every 20 minutes. So if it's an hour lecture, you have at least 2 activities in the middle of that if they're spaced out right there. So teach interactively to engage attention. I know as a student or as someone who sits through a lot of lectures that it's very easy to fall asleep. I've done it many times, even when I really want to know the information. I'm still tired and the room is dark, so it's easy to fall asleep. So this helps you keep attention. Some of the methods in teaching interactively, I will show you many of them today. But you saw a free response where people were typing something and the words came out. You saw a poll where we had a multiple choice. And I'll show you some of the other ones. Think, pair, share. You'll do a discussion and that kind of thing. You can use online tools. You can do all of these in a classroom without online tools, but you can also use online tools, especially if the internet is working. What I'm using today is Poll Everywhere. There's also, I really love this tool, Kahoot. My kids use it in their school or in some educational activities, and it's fun. It's a fun game kind of oriented thing, but it's really good. Yeah, it's like a competition. You're trying to respond to multiple choice questions usually as quickly as possible. So it's very good for things where you can convey your information as multiple choice questions. But a lot of the things we're doing today aren't just multiple choice questions, so I didn't use Kahoot for today. Okay, so teach interactively. Number 3, a third principle is to set learning objectives as your own goals. Okay, so learning objectives are extremely important. If you take away anything from today, learning objectives, I would say, is the most important thing. And this basically is, we should plan ahead of time as we're teaching, plan ahead of time, what should the students know or be able to do by the end of this class. Now, if you followed that form, that the University of Tripoli's form, it will ask you these kinds of questions. What is the student going to be able to know or do by the end of this class? And these learning objectives are extremely important. And we have to know how to write good learning objectives that really match up well with what students should be getting out of a class. We would want to write learning objectives for the whole class, for a whole course. It also makes sense to write learning objectives even for a single class period. So, for example, I'll give an example. Yes, question.
What the importance of his learning objectives to student?
Yeah, what is the importance of the learning objectives to a student? Not to the teacher. Yes, the learning objectives for the student are will help the student have an idea. This is part of the map, right? Because the learning objectives for the student, if when the student looks at learning objectives, they should be able to say, oh, you mean I'm going to be able to do that when I'm done with this class? Great. That's going to help me get a job. That's going to help me do this kind of research. That's going to help me achieve these other goals that I want. So if we write our learning objectives well, then it gives people an accurate representation of what they'll get out of it and how they'll be able to use it in the future. So it's very helpful for students. And I'll say a little bit more about online learning later, but especially in an online learning environment, setting the learning objectives is important. It's also very important, these learning objectives for the teacher, because it helps you design a lot of things. And we'll get into that in a second. I want to say, how do you write good learning objectives? Well, it helps to think about Bloom's taxonomy. How many of you have seen Bloom's taxonomy before? Probably a lot of you. Yeah, so some of you have seen it. Bloom's taxonomy here just gives you different types of things that you can learn. And some of them, at the bottom level, you have just recalling facts and basic concepts. How do I remember information? But it takes a little bit more, not just to remember something, memorize it, but to understand it, right? And even harder than understanding it is being able to take that information and apply it in a new setting, in a controlled setting, to see how it is applied in multiple settings and analyze the connections between them. That's another level of learning. To be able to say, well, I see all those connections, and I think that this is could be improved by doing X, Y, Z. That's an evaluation type of task. And even more difficult than that, perhaps, would be to create something new out of this knowledge and the ability to apply it. And so Bloom's taxonomy helps us think of these types of things. On the right side of this diagram, you can see that there are some verbs that you can use in designing educational objectives. And these are some of the verbs that you have. And so I have an example here in just a second. I do want to say that the top levels of this pyramid are oftentimes left out. A lot of times we just want people to memorize. I can control things better if they just memorize what I say, and then at least they know it. Well, they know it in a remember and understand way, but maybe they're not going to ever be able to analyze something if you don't teach them how, if they just get the information there, right? So if your objectives are for them to be able to do these types of things, then you want to design your class to meet those objectives. So here's an example of objectives. So we're still on that English for Scientific Publications class. So I want you guys to, as I read each of these, I want you to think which of the verbs in this pyramid apply to each one, okay? So number one, author a stylistically clear and technically sound scientific article. Which one is that? I would say that's a creation task, okay? To author something. You're writing something new. Okay, so to give helpful critical peer reviews of submitted scientific research. Okay, I would say that that's evaluate. You are saying, okay, this this paper is good in these ways and bad in those ways. You're doing evaluation. The next one, perform a literature review and include it as a related work section. Analyze, good. Yes, I would say it's analyze because you're seeing the connections between different things. Read scientific publications efficiently, finding the most relevant information the most quickly. This is a skill. You could say understand. I would actually put apply because you have some knowledge and you're able to apply it to new scientific publications that you're reading. You're not necessarily analyzing all of those things, but you are analyzing a little bit. I mean, these are not bizabit, you know. It's approximate for each one of these. And then the last one, fine-tune English style and avoid common English language learning mistakes. I'd say it's just remember. You have to remember, oh, here's this grammar rule, here's this typo that a lot of people make and I need to avoid it, this kind of thing, okay? So set learning objectives as your own, set learning objectives is an important thing. This is an example of learning objectives. It also matters, these learning objectives also matter in how you set up your assessments in your class. So for example, if you're going to do multiple choice tests, which part of this pyramid is that going to serve? It's going to help people remember things mostly, okay? Maybe understand a little bit. It's understand and remember. A problem set, you'll probably be applying your knowledge to a new setting or analyzing something. An essay, you might be analyzing things and you might be evaluating. A research project, you're probably doing all of these things, but at the end of the day, you're probably also creating something new, right?
But Mr. Stephen, I
Yes.
see apply under creativity, okay? Apply.
Yes.
Maybe.
Uh-huh.
Remember, understand, analyze, evaluate, and then apply creativity. What about this?
مش فاهم بالضبط.
Maybe apply under the creative level of apply.
Uh-huh.
Okay, under creativity level.
Creativity. Nice.
Just below the create.
You think that apply is higher than? Yeah. The way that that in the Bloom's taxonomy that it's using apply is to say you're using information in new situations here. Like, see, you're using information in new situations. Oh, sorry. Well, anyways, so if you're using your information in new situations, but you're not necessarily so let's see, in a technical setting, you might be saying, oh, I'm going to write some code to apply what I've learned. But I would say that what you're doing in evaluation may be saying something like, okay, well, what is the purpose of this code, and is it achieving it, and how well is it doing it? Okay, so even though applying can be a very high order thing in certain fields, there's still another layer beyond it even in those fields. So it's not saying that applying is bad. It's a very good thing as well. I'm going to move on because I want to also say about these learning objectives that a lot of times we say we want these learning objectives. We say this is what we want to get out of a particular class or something like that. But there are also real life objectives that we're trying to maximize or optimize as teachers. There's real life things that that kind of get in the way. So do you guys have any other thoughts besides learning objectives as you're planning a class? Are there other objectives that you are trying to meet as a teacher? What are things that you want? What are other things besides just, you know, you saw this list here. If I'm going to teach this class, what else would I be trying to do as I'm preparing for it? Any ideas? Maybe this is too open-ended of a question.
As a student.
Sorry, as a teacher. Sorry, as a teacher. Okay, well, this might be too open-ended. Here are some real-life objectives that I can think of, okay? Reward independent or studious students, right? You want to say, oh, this person is really showing that they have some knowledge. I think sometimes by saying, I want the people who are really good to show that they are doing really well, sometimes we fail to give everybody sometimes we fail to give the tools to everybody to achieve that level. And in fact, if we give the tools to a lot of people, then those people who are really good, they'll still distinguish themselves. Using constructive feedback. Okay, yeah, that's one of the other things you might want to do in your classroom. Yeah, so the method in which you're teaching something might be important as well. Yeah, that's very good. You want to try out a new methodology in your teaching. Another real life objective is I want to show that I'm an expert. And because in the classroom, if I can establish that I'm an expert, then people will listen to me and they'll be able to receive the information well, right? And that's why you want to establish yourself as an expert in a classroom. Sometimes that makes us fearful of trying something new in a classroom, or of doing something different, right? Or of inviting responses from people. So that's another thing. Keeping control of the classroom, the same kind of idea. And here's a big one for me personally: minimize preparation time, right? Like, everybody knows how hard it is to teach a class. If you want to do a really good job, you could sink all of your time into this one class, and you'd have no time for anything else. And it would be a wonderful class, but you just can't do it. You have a life to live, and you have to go home and have lunch with your family, or, you know, you have something, things have to happen, right? It's real life. So, yeah. So there's real life goals, and these are not bad goals. It's just saying that there are going to be places where the real life goals that you have as you are preparing lectures and preparing courses are sometimes going to butt up against the learning objectives that you've said are the goals of your class. They're not your personal goals, they're the goals of the class. So it takes some personal reflection and character to make sure that you can still do a good job getting the learning objectives met in a class. There's some optimization there. You're not going to do only the stuff in this class. You don't have to put aside all of your life just to do that. But you do need to ask yourself, is my real life objective a barrier to the learning objectives, right? For example, if I'm very, very intent on keeping control of the classroom so that I'm never going to allow any kind of discussion or something like that in my classroom, am I going to be able to get to some of those higher levels of the Bloom's taxonomy, where people are able to criticize and comparatively constructively criticize somebody else's work or something like that? You're never going to get that kind of interaction if you are so intent on holding on to the control of your classroom. So there are some places where you have to consider whether you're going to be able to do it. And I think some of the reason that it's difficult for a lot of us to do this is that it's often caught rather than taught. You have to see an example of somebody doing it, and then you're like, oh, well, I could do that. It's not that hard. Like, you know, Dr. Stephen, like, he did it, and he didn't do it very well. And he was like, there's all this extra time wasted in the classroom. I could do it better than that. And then all of a sudden you say, yeah, of course I could do that in my classroom, right? So it's when you see it and when you've caught it, you're not taught it, it's just told that this is how you're supposed to do it. You should be able to apply it, I think. So I want us to do a bigger activity. I'm going to ask you to write learning objectives yourselves in groups. So I'd like you, those of you who are here in the lecture hall, to split into groups of 2 or 3. Sorry about the corona. You guys can, the social distancing, you can talk to each other from a seat away or something like that, or if you're comfortable with it, however else. But split into groups of 2 or 3. Look for someone right now. Can you, for those of you here, split into groups of 2 or 3. And those who are online, yeah, so go ahead and change seats if you need to identify, make eye contact, say hi, say your name to the person if you don't know them. Please, everybody, find a partner or a group of 3. And yes, I think that will be, if you can just make this online, the people online will be assigned to random breakout rooms. So in a minute, those breakout rooms will happen and you'll be open to them. But let me describe what you're going to do in your groups first. Who does not have a group? Can you raise your hand if you do not have a group yet?
Group number 1.
You have to be able to talk to each other. You have to be able to talk to each other. Thank you. Dr. Marwan is handing out paper. Thank you.
What about this one?
Yeah. In a second. Yeah, they'll be able to touch it. Yes. Yeah. Yes. In a minute, let me just not yet. Those of you who are online, in a minute, I will ask you to, when you get into the rooms, you can unmute, you can talk to each other freely and come up and then work on this assignment. So everyone, what we're doing here, you are going to, let's say that your group is going to give a lecture on family in Libya to a foreigner like me. Tell me about what family in Libya is like, some of the intricacies of how things work, stuff like that. And so I want you to write learning objectives for a lecture on family in Libya. What are the things that you want me to get out of your lecture? Okay? Okay, so go ahead and start, and then breakout rooms will start, and I'll give you guys about 7 minutes. I'll give you 7 minutes. So go ahead. Yeah.
الو السلام عليكم. ايوه اسمه فيا.
Yeah.
Hello, can anyone hear me?
Yes. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you very well. I'm a student in IT. I study in information technology. Are you all teachers here, or are they students?
It's still going.
Yeah.
Thank you. So everybody who is in the main room right now, you need to accept the invitation to join a breakout room. You are not going to be in a breakout room until you accept the invitation.
Okay.
Yeah, maybe. So what I did here is when I saw that a lot of people were participating, I moved out to the room where actually that's people online here. Great, take just one more minute. Just one more minute. Now that it's closing.
الو السلام عليكم.
All right, everybody, welcome back. I hope you guys had a productive time
I guess you finished.
writing out some learning objectives. I'm sure there's more that you could say. It seems like everybody was writing some good stuff down, and there's more that could be said about this topic of family in Libya and how you would want to convey that as learning objectives. But I just want to hear at least one learning objective from each group. And you can say it in Arabic first, as long as somebody can translate it for me, that would be helpful. But why don't we start with in the back there? One learning objective. To make information more interesting and fun. Okay, student-centered learning. Okay. Okay, great. I want to say that I think this is a great goal. That's a great goal to have as you're teaching. As a learning objective, what we want is things that the student is going to be able to do or know or something like that at the end of your time together. So I think what you're saying that the way that to bring out some of those things from them is through some of these methods that you're hoping you'll be able to use. So thank you. How about over here? We had a big group.
Okay, one of the main objectives that I'm going to teach my student is to explain the relationship between the family members, because our families is consisting of a large members. So to explain the relationship in between. Okay, and to show the foreigner students how parents control and give the authorities of their sons or daughters, and how they are I'm here managing their families.
Okay, so you're talking about you want people to know the relationships between family members and how authority is passed between people. Okay, great. So that gives us some of the content, and this is an objective that is kind of where do you think that sits on the spectrum here? Everybody, where do you think that sits on the spectrum? To know the relationships. Understanding? Yeah, I think that's about right. Understanding, good. How about here in the middle?
Importance of traditional Libyan dishes with Mediterranean food.
Okay, okay. So to know the importance of the food. Yes, okay, that's good.
How it's healthy, how it's tasty, how it's variety from the other kind of.
Yeah, the differences between other foods in the area. Very good. Yes, so that's another area of content. And where do you guys think that sits on the spectrum again?
Something to remember, maybe distinction.
Remember? Yeah? Okay. Yes.
The analysis, because they test the food and they try to remember it.
Ah.
So bad.
I think it justifies why we care about the Libyan.
Justify.
Dishes.
Okay, okay. I would say that with this content area, you could do a lot. You could, with the content area of food, you can do something like understanding the importance. But if you are teaching people recipes, if you give somebody a recipe, then you can have them apply it.
Yes.
If you want people to evaluate the food, then they have to try multiple foods to see the differences between them, right? So yes, great, great. How about here? Unmute. Okay, let us move on. I could have written some combined objectives here. I didn't. Okay, the next point is to teach inductively, to engage deeply. And this is what we've just done with our exercise in family in Libya. Inductive, meaning that you discover it instead of just having me tell you, or instead of having the lecturer or the professor or the teacher telling you, hey, you need to know this, just trust me. Instead, look, why don't you discover for yourself why you need to do this, okay? So I was trying to have you discover for yourself why learning objectives are important. Because if you design your learning objectives in this without thinking about Bloom's taxonomy and all those kinds of things, then you'll just end up with all just knowledge, and people won't be able to apply it or go to those higher levels, right? And so there's this idea of, I want you to discover it, so do an activity where you feel the need to learn the information. So why do we teach inductively? It integrates our purposes or our learning objectives with the skills and knowledge. It gets us to the upper levels of Bloom's taxonomy. And it's robust to diverse learners. We have people in this classroom who maybe have zero teaching experience, and we have other people who have, decades of teaching experience. So these different types of learners are going to, when they're in their breakout rooms or they're speaking, they're responding to my questions, they are bringing something different to the table. And we're learning from those people who have more knowledge about a subject. We're also, because we're learning inductively and everybody's learning it together, those who don't know something are less afraid to, hopefully, are less afraid to speak up and say, oh, I have a question about this. Can you help me figure this out? And there are some drawbacks. Of course, it takes time. It took time out of this lecture, seminar, whatever, to do this exercise that we just did. And you have to manage the classroom. For example, it is very helpful to actually go through each group after you've done the exercise and ask people to respond. If you don't ask people to respond after you have assigned people in groups and to work on something, if they don't respond and they just did it for themselves, the next time you do the exercise, they'll just, they didn't even ask me anyways. So I don't have to do it. Let's just like sit and play a game on our phones or something, Instead of that, if you keep people accountable by always checking with every group, then people know to expect, hey, I need to engage here. And so you have to do some classroom management to do this well. But the other point I want to say is that it's not just teaching inductively. Also, what we saw in activity 2 was teaching cooperatively, where you are cooperating together on a task together to accomplish something. And so you're discovering it not just by yourself, but you're discovering it with peers, with input from peers. And not only are you like learning some of these higher levels from the Bloom's taxonomy, but you're also getting teamwork. You're learning to work on a team with other people cooperatively towards a goal. A drawback is that when you're doing this, you have diverse variable group experiences. I hope everyone here was happy with their partner or with their group or something, but it's definitely possible that you get in a group with somebody who just loves to talk and you can't say anything. It happens, and it's a risk that you have to take. I judge that a lot of times it's worth it to take that risk. And you can try to do things like, okay, you have a group of 3 and maybe somebody will be able to, yeah. So there's a variable group experience, but as people get used to these kinds of techniques and these kinds of activities, then also people know what to expect. And if somebody is always talking a lot, then maybe people will just be like, hey, I'm gonna get in a different kind of group, and then then maybe that person who talks a lot will come up and talk to the professor, and you'll say, hey, I've heard from people, you need to be a little more sensitive to other people's input, something like that, So there is classroom management, but it's not something you can't deal with. It's a different set of problems, but it's problems that are worth working through. So now I want to ask a few questions here. What did you think about this activity that we just did? Number 2, designing learning objectives for family in Libya. This is kind of meta level. I'm asking you to evaluate what we just did. And so I want to start by asking you for pluses. What are things that you liked about this activity? And I'm gonna go ahead and start online. What are pluses from activity number 2 on writing learning objectives? So if you're online, go ahead and you can put some of these, your answers here. What are some things that you liked about this? And so for people in the room here in the lecture hall, what are some pluses? And I'll just write them down. What are things that you liked about this activity?
Cooperating together.
Okay.
Exchanging the ideas first, discussing, and then try to write the lesson.
Teamwork. Okay, good. Others?
The time control also.
Time control. Okay. What was it about time control that you liked?
You manage your time. So you said stop now, and then you said, okay. It's enough.
Okay. Okay, using a timer. Not like that first activity where we just dragged on because we were trying to get internet. Good. Anyone else? Sharing experiences. Okay. Others?
Interaction could be the same, I think, as the first one.
Okay.
Interaction. People get more confidence about the class, about the course itself. Felt more confidence.
Okay. Gives confidence in what you're learning. Hey, I've written learning objectives already. I did it for this example, so I think I should be able to do it, that kind of thing. Good. Others?
Okay, at the end, you will give us a chance to share our ideas with the whole class, with the whole students. So,
Student contribution.
yes.
Student contributions to the whole class. Okay. Working as a team. Yeah. Yeah, cooperating together, teamwork. We'll put another check by there. Okay, others? Evaluate the students. Can you explain a little more? Okay.
We gave feedback at the end of this activity.
Yeah.
To be sure from our answer, you discuss with us and you analyze the answers.
Okay. From the instructor gave some evaluation and feedback on the things that you said. Okay, great. Great. Let's look at some deltas. I like this activity. What are some ways that this exercise could have been improved, or that you see, hey, that was nice, but we could have done this even better if X, Y, Z. So, oh, sorry, before I get there, let's see what they said online here. Let's see, if somebody was intimidated to participate, they were able to share it with the partner, which is less intimidating than sharing it with the instructor immediately. That's a great point. Yes, this peer-to-peer interaction is more
Respect other ideas.
Teamwork and a variety of ideas. Thank you to those online for your contributions here. We're going to move to the next question. What were the deltas? What are things that could be improved in this? So lecture hall, those of you who are online, you can put your answers in now. And those in the lecture hall, what are some things that could have been improved? Okay. Could feeling good with the time control could have been
control and ending of all topics in specific control. Okay. Maybe more, maybe.
Okay. You want more control of time. Okay. Okay. This is a brainstorm, so that's yeah. So everybody's opinion or whatever is worth writing down. Others? Difficult for large groups, yes. So this is this kind of thing is drawbacks. Yes, this is a drawback that you're talking about. For this evaluation activity, things that you could change for next time, you would probably say something like, this would be like, if this was a larger group, then next time you would need to probably change the activity in some ways, right? Yes. Okay.
I think one more thing I consider is very important, especially for the academic and teaching culture, is giving an example about the main subject or the main idea.
Okay.
People will evaluate or create, describe.
Okay.
Yeah, just give an example or a brief.
Okay. So here you mean that you're saying that you would need more of an example of a learning objective, of how to write learning
Just an
objectives.
example is a small idea about the subject between brackets that describe or explaining very well.
So a little bit more guidance on the how-to. On the how-to of writing the learning objective itself. Okay, good. Okay.
I think we share the same point. It's just an example.
Maybe we need more time.
But raising the time stuff, we have
Okay. Tell who is the audience. Better. So just saying, oh, you're teaching this to a foreigner. Well, where are you teaching it? How many are there going to be? Yes. Well, yeah. What is this? Somebody who's moving to Libya, or is it somebody who's doing research from Italy or something? Yes. That's very different. Yeah. Very nice. Very nice. Other thoughts? Okay, let me check online and see if anyone has some. Oops. Oh no, I think I clicked clear responses. I do not see responses online here. Okay, well that's fine. Oh, more time control. Okay. Okay. So we talked about more time control already. Other thoughts? Educational background of who? Mm-hmm. Yeah, this is educational backgrounds.
Communication skills, for example,
Language ability. Yes. Okay. Yes. Culture. Yeah, if you're talking to another Arab, it's very different.
Be confident to be share their idea.
Dividing the student into groups. You just ask, join your group and choose your group. What do you think? Is it better if the teacher or the instructor divide the students, giving them a chance to be together? Because sometimes they get together, those who have a high level, they come together and they try to do the activities. The others, they have multiple levels and different levels. So how can you manage this?
Yeah, that's a great point. This is an idea that some professors will do things one way, some will do another. Some will just depend on what class is in front of them. They might employ one way or another, but pre-assigned groups are definitely an idea that people do use to increase the diversity in a group, to make sure that to spread out the abilities in terms of the diversity, or of course, if there are people who don't get along very well, that they might not accidentally end up in the same group. But it's helpful for people to learn how to work with the people they don't like as well. So, but you can do that even in pre-assigned groups. So in the course of a whole semester class, a whole term, of course, you can play with things like that. Okay, get into your assigned groups or something like that. You can do that, or they can pick their own groups. Get into your project groups that you've chosen yourself. Or there's lots of options. And the point is not that you have to do one thing all the time, but that you're willing to try some of these things if they achieve your learning objectives better. Right? So yeah, so this kind of activity helps you get at some types of learning objectives. Let me see if is there anything else? Students shouldn't feel free to ask questions, not to feel embarrassed. Okay, yeah, definitely. I didn't really give much time for people to ask questions during the 7 minutes or whatever, so that would be helpful. Great, so let's move on. And basically my next point is just what we just did. Invite feedback and always look to improve your teaching. Again, this might be something that's difficult because we want to say, okay, I'm the expert and all that kind of stuff. And there's real good reason for that. But what we did here in getting teaching feedback is to say, hey, I need to improve. It says two things, actually. First, it assumes a contribution. The thing we just did was the pluses and deltas. The pluses assume that the teacher is contributing something. You have done something that's good, right? And that does benefit people in some way. And so that's a good way to start a conversation about a constructively critical conversation, is to start by saying, hey, you did do something that was a contribution, but then it also assumes that you're not perfect. The way that you delivered something, the way that you did your teaching was not perfect or final. It's not like I did it this way and it's always going to be that way. And if you don't learn it from this, then you're just stupid. You don't leave it that way. It requires some humility to say, hey, I could have taught that better. I could have made that more clear, something like that, and be willing to hear that. So when you do an exercise like pluses and deltas, if you're responding to each delta by, oh, but you didn't catch that other part in the previous slide where I gave you an example of this thing, or if that's how you respond every time that somebody gives you a delta, then people are going to very quickly learn, no, it's not safe for me to give my honest feedback in this place. So you need to invite feedback in an honest way, saying, I actually think that I could have improved and I'm willing to make changes in the future. This is an investment in student-teacher communication. It's an investment in the relationship between the student and the teacher. And I think this creates for a better learning environment. It's just better for students to say, I have a stake, I have a role in my own learning and in the way this is being taught. Okay, and it helps students feel engaged. It helps them feel like, hey, if I'm not learning it well right now, then this professor is going to be willing to change, and perhaps it will be better for me next time, or it'll be better for the next student. So I'm happy to make contributions to their teaching ability. I should also say though, there are also peer-to-peer, teacher-to-teacher, faculty-to-faculty feedback that you can give. So actually, since you guys are all professors and teachers, you guys are actually giving me peer feedback. And this is something that's very important in, huh?
There will be feedback.
There will be feedback, yes. Yeah, so it's also, if you do feedback from other professors and that kind of thing, you get to collaborate together. You're working together on, hey, we're both teachers, we're both trying to do a good job in conveying information and achieving our learning objectives, and you build rapport. Other examples of ways to invite feedback, not just an exercise like this, which was in the class and all of that kind of stuff, but this is something that you can do to through a course survey at the end of maybe after a midterm or after you're done with your course, you give a survey to your students. If you have a Microsoft Teams channel or a Slack channel or a Facebook group or something like that, where you're communicating regularly with people, then that's another way to get more real-time feedback. It just depends on how much feedback, how often, on what types of things. But rest assured, if you don't ask for feedback and create the space for feedback, people aren't going to give it to you. Well, okay, some people will give it to you, but you won't get the variety of opinions that that would actually be representative of the students. The people who complain really loudly, those people will come to you, or maybe the people who are trying to get something from you as a teacher, they'll come to you. So, okay, I have a couple more topics. Number 6, another principle is to employ rubrics to assess students quantitatively. And this is kind of more my own idea. What I mean by rubrics, you probably have already done things similar to this. But say you are assigning a laboratory write-up for a science laboratory or a computing laboratory, or maybe a write-up on something else is fine too. But for a laboratory write-up, they're going to write something about experiments they did. And so in this kind of thing, maybe out of 100 points, you assign 10 points to clarity of the writing, 20 points to meaningful comparison, 20 points to substance, stuff like that. What happens when you don't have a rubric oftentimes is all of the grading becomes very subjective, right? So somebody turns in a report and, oh, this is not clear. This is really not clear. Yeah, this result looks right, but this writing is terrible. I just really don't like this. And then you give them a poor grade because it's not clear. But once you've broken it down into this rubric, you say, you know, it was really clear. They only got 1 point for clarity. But you know what? They actually got the right answers. And actually, what I cared about at this point was that they got the answers right. Their English ability or their ability to write, you know, that's important, but that wasn't the main thing that I was trying to get out of this laboratory write-up. And so when you break down things this way, it helps in various different ways. One thing that you're doing here when you set down a rubric is, one thing you're able to do is that you can align it to your objectives. You can say, you know, I really do value that they get these results correct here in this part here, that the correctness of results, that's the most important thing to me in this particular assignment. I value clarity, but not quite as much as that correctness of results, right? And so you can say in your objectives, I care about these different things. And you can also say, you can put all of your objectives into your rubric. You can give grades to whether people are meeting their learning objectives or not, right? Another thing is that if you publish, another way to do, I say not another, the way to do rubrics is to publish them beforehand. When you give the assignment, you say, this is how you will be graded on this assignment. And so if you want a good grade, then make sure it's clear, make sure you compare meaningfully, make sure you, instead of bringing out in new criteria that they didn't even realize that they were going to be graded on, right? You want to set their expectations for what they're going to be graded on. I use rubrics in all types of assessments. At this kind of a level, I'll often break things down in finer grained detail, like, okay, even in the substance section, I'm gonna break it down. And what that allows us to do is, it allows us to standardize and make scoring transparent. So a student comes to you and says, I only got 80%. Why did I get 80%? You can say, well, here's the breakdown of why it's 80%. Even if it's something subjective, even if it's a paper, and they think, oh, my teacher just didn't like me. That's why I got a low grade. Well, you can say, well, it's not that I didn't like you. What I didn't like was that you weren't clear in this section, but you got these results correct. But here's what it was. And so when you give people quantification, even of something subjective like clarity, people understand, okay, this isn't just them being a person who doesn't like me or whatever else. They're actually thinking about my learning. They're caring about my learning and what I'm getting out of this class and what I'm going to be able to do with the material. And that's why this quantification of scores, that they can look to that to say, okay, it's not just arbitrary. Okay, so that's some of the reasons that I enjoy, that I like rubrics. Okay, I have, I think based on time, I'm going to skip this activity here. I was going to ask you to, how would you assign a grade to your students' attainment of learning objectives in our family in Libya lecture? If you want to, you can take this home and think about the objectives that you wrote, and you can say, well, what kinds of assessments would be helpful for this? Like, for example, if you're talking about food, a high-level assessment for food is, I'm going to put 3 dishes here in front of you, and you're going to try each of them, and I want you to write about the differences between them and compare the differences between them, and tell me which one would be the most suitable for a wedding, something like that. Okay, this is going to be an integrated kind of essay that includes some physical touch and taste and all this kind of thing, right? And you're going to grade them, and then you're going to put a rubric on that. Did they describe the flavors and the spices? Did they describe all of these? Did they describe the interactions between different things? Were they able to analyze how this would affect the wedding, the jour of the wedding, you know, this kind of thing. So, okay, so you can do that on your own time if you want. Okay, now because we're in Corona time, not just because we're in Corona time, but also because our world is moving to be more technology oriented. What do you think? I have one major piece of advice for teaching online. If your class is 100% online, I have one major piece of advice. Teach blank when teaching online. What do you think fills this blank? How should you teach if you're teaching online? What do you think might be the most important thing? Yeah. Teach agreement?
Oh, okay. Sorry. As a method?
Yeah, a method. Like, how would you? I think you're saying something like teach collaboratively.
Yeah.
Okay. What did you say? Okay, teach using technology, using apps. Okay. Okay. Far away. This distance. Okay, yeah. Teach remotely when teaching online. Yes, of course. Yes. I'm asking for a method, like, or not method. I'm asking for a. Well, okay. We'll just. Yes. Oh, interactively. Okay. Some people online are saying teach clearly, teach interactively. Those are all those. Yeah, those are good adjectives. Other adjectives to describe how you might want to teach online. Okay. Interact online, use a PowerPoint presentation. So they have something they're looking at online. Okay. Good, good. Okay. Well, I'm going to fill in the blank here. Asynchronously. Teach asynchronously when teaching online. And asynchronous meaning that people don't have to be in a specific spot at a specific time for most of the things. Our online options, when people first started teaching online, we would do things like, let's everybody be on Viber at 10 a.m. And then, or everybody be on Facebook at 10 a.m. and I'm gonna give you assignments, or I'm gonna give you a video lecture or something like that, or everybody jump on a Zoom call at 10 a.m. Okay, but what happens is that somebody misses, you're like, wait, there's like 20 people in this class, but 13 of them are here. Do I start or do I not? Like, what do I do? Oh, those 7 people missed. What do I do about those 7 people? Are they no longer able to continue in the class? It's actually harder to be on time to something like that. So then people started saying, okay, some people are gonna miss and things are gonna happen. The power is gonna go out, I don't know. So let's record it and make it available online, okay? Or you could even just start by recording things and making it available online. You could just have your YouTube channel and, hey, I'm gonna record these videos and just watch that video, and then I'm gonna make it YouTube Premiere or Facebook Live or something, and we're gonna record it, and it's gonna be, you can watch it later, okay? So that was the next way that people were gonna do that. I tried to do some of this when Corona first started. Yeah.
One time for that, but one place, how is one place?
One place?
Not one place.
Right, yeah, you're right.
One time.
Yeah. You're pointing out here that one time in one place. This is not really correct. It's not really one place because everybody's remote in a different place. I just meant that each student has to be sitting in the seat in front of their computer or whatever in order to be able to participate at that moment. Yeah. So people then moved to making things primarily self-paced. Okay, there's just this series of lectures online, and at any point you can go and watch them, and then you can learn about them. Once people started doing that, then we started recognizing that you have to give attainable, self-paced learning objectives, and the different types of activities, lectures, whatever, readings, activities, quizzes, forums, all of those types of online tools that they use, they should be united together under learning objectives that the learners themselves want to accomplish. So people basically kind of centered on, hey, we need to do self-paced learning, and oftentimes it's useful to use a learning management system, LMS, like Canvas or Moodle or Google Classroom or something like that, so that you can say, hey, here's this collection of topics that you need to work through at your own pace, so you have these skills or you have this knowledge at the end of this section. Work through it by Thursday at noon. And at Thursday at noon, I'm going to release a quiz, and you have to finish that quiz by 2 p.m. You have 2 hours to finish your quiz, something like that, right? So what you get is that people, you needed to it took some adjustment. It takes some adjustment to move from a synchronous mindset in online teaching to an asynchronous mindset. Some of the strengths are that this is robust to scheduling problems or internet and power cuts. You also get student engagement, but of a different kind. You don't get the face-to-face direct engagement of a student, but the student in their mind is saying, oh, I need to learn these concepts and these ideas, and I can do it. I'm in control of it. I'm just gonna watch this video. I'm gonna know this stuff. I'm gonna do this exercise. I'm gonna be able to do this stuff, right? So it puts the students in the driver's seat a little bit in terms of taking charge of their own education. A weakness, of course, is the peer-to-peer interaction. You can try to do it some with forums, with a chat service like I was talking about with Microsoft Teams or Slack. You can also do, yeah, there are different ways to try to do this, but there's fundamental things that are more difficult with peer-to-peer interaction when you're working online. Okay, so, oh, sorry, I should mention also, my university, UT Health, we actually use the flipped classroom a lot. Even when we have in-person sessions, we'll have videos, whole lectures or video segments of different sections to watch, and you watch that before you come to the meeting time, the classroom time. And when you come to the classroom time, you bring your questions, you bring the things that you need to hash out, and then what you're doing in your classroom time is stuff that requires the presence of the professor. It requires the presence of other people to work together on stuff. And it's almost a little bit more like a lab time. So that's a flipped classroom, because instead of making everybody do all of that hashing out of figuring out the nitty-gritty on their own, they're figuring out the details together in the classroom while they have already gotten the background knowledge. It allows you to push your class in-person activities higher up the Bloom's taxonomy because they got the knowledge and understanding a little bit earlier.
Do you hear they attend the class before they go to the university?
They watch the material. They get the material of the class before they go to the university.
Okay.
Yeah.
They watch the material. You recorded the material and then
Yes.
you send it to the
Yes,
students.
that's right. That's right.
Okay, that's right.
Yeah. Yeah. So recording the material ahead of time. التعليم الباكوس. بهي. معكوس. معكوس is backwards, like act.
They watch the material before they go to school, and then when they go to school, they discuss. They just only apply the material and discuss some issues with the teacher.
Great.
They start planning and stuff like that.
They take the exam for new subject before they take the subject.
Okay.
It's not like that.
Yeah, this way I learned that they do the exams
Okay.
for the new subject. Then you take the new subject.
Exam at the beginning of a subject, as Dr. Marwan is saying, is a technique that you can use, especially if the exam at the beginning is diagnostic.
Yes.
So you get an idea of how far your students are along in a particular subject, and then you know where to focus. And so that can be a very helpful thing. And so, yeah, that's a different technique that you could also apply in the course of a whole semester long class. Okay, I am, let's see, we are almost at 2 hours here. Thank you guys for your patience and for sticking with us. I originally had a few other comments about beyond the classroom from some of my teaching experience. I'm wondering, I think I am going to, why don't I say everybody stand up for a minute. Can everyone stand up? And then just take a break. Just like exercise, yeah. You know, I do relax a little bit. Just close your eyes, drink some water, that kind of stuff. We don't have much left. Maybe just like 10 more minutes. Okay, but just okay. All right, go ahead. You can sit down, or if you want to stay standing, you can. It's just some of the activities yeah, so yeah, I know it's been a long time, so thank you for all of your time with me today. I have two more things, and these come directly from my personal experience. One thing that I want to say is that students learn our values as well as our content. By the way that we set up our classes, we are conveying not just the material that's there, but we're conveying something about what we care about. And if students realize that their professor doesn't care about their learning at all, they just care about doing their job and getting out of there, then they'll definitely be less engaged. And if they feel like their professor cares about them as, I'll get there. Okay. I wrote down some of these things in terms of values in a blog post that's linked at the end. I called, in my first time teaching natural language processing in a technical setting, I realized that peer reviews were not very much used in technical education, but they are all over the place as soon as you become an academic. When you start your PhD and you write your first paper, people are commenting, you're getting feedback, and then whether it gets accepted into a conference or into a journal is based on peer review. And we weren't doing any of that in the whole education process, in any of the classes. So I realized, hey, what if we do peer reviews for our homework assignments and things like that? And then I started going further down this rabbit hole of, well, if we are going to do peer reviews, what else needs to change? And so I came up with, I realized, okay, I want to convey values in what I'm teaching, not just the learning objectives, and not just, I have a reason that I want to be teaching. And these are some of the reasons I want to be teaching. I want students to, I want there to be transparency, excellence, collaboration, humility, innovation. That's why it's TECHI education, techie education. This is what I came up for myself and for my classes that I taught. And how did but the thing is, these are just words unless you actually implement them. What I'm saying is that if we set up our classes in a way, we can actually show our values. So I value transparency. So I had students, most of you may not know Git version control, but for coding, this is a way to put your work out so that other people can look at your programming code and can comment on it and where it was right and where it was wrong, and all this kind of stuff, and it gets updated and that kind of thing. So I used that for transparency. Of course, people had a private way to submit their assignments as well, so that I would see it only and that kind of thing. But the idea here is that there is transparency, that the work that people are doing is available to others. This is not a common way to implement something like this, but another thing is excellence. And when I talk about excellence, I'm not just talking about getting high scores, because what use are high scores if people can get high scores but aren't able to perform a job in the future? Or if they get high scores but it doesn't actually correlate with their being a good researcher or engineer or journalist or something like that, right? So so I used rubrics to define excellence. I put something like I've had a collaboration grade, I had a participation grade, I had various parts of my way of grading to say, I care about excellence in multifaceted kind of dimensions, including the content of the class. Yes.
Do we here talk about creativity in the students?
Yes, creativity I'll get to in a minute, with innovation, yeah. So yes, the question was that. Excellence, yeah, so what I was saying is excellence is kind of like an umbrella. If you want to say you need to be excellent in creativity, then I was saying, okay, in your rubric, in your grade, in your scores, give some grade for specifically for creativity or innovation, right? So you get to define what type of excellence by your grading. Then I wanted to teach collaboration, and so I gave people a collegiality grade. People reviewed each other's homeworks, and when they reviewed that other person's homework, if they wrote a very poor review, they said, this was good, and that's all they write, then they get a lower grade for collegiality. In other words, they're not helping the other person by giving good feedback. On the other side, if somebody is giving really good feedback and responding to forum posts, somebody asks a question, they respond very well, and people are actually using the information that they got from their peers, then their collegiality grade would be very high. Then I had, the next thing was humility. And I think this is really important because for me as an academic and doing research, my first draft is never my best. If you look at my, the grant application that we just submitted with Dr. Adil to start a master's and PhD program here, the first draft of the writing, sure, that took hours. Sure, I put a lot of effort into the sections that I wrote, but then I put in about as much time, or maybe not as much time, but a lot of hours on top of that, editing it and improving it, because the first draft wasn't that great. And there were things that I didn't understand, things that I didn't know, and other things that could have been improved. Just like we were saying with the pluses and deltas, right? And so if we really think that humility is important, that things can be improved, then how can we show that in our classes? What I did was I allowed my students to, after they submitted their first assignment, for the next 72 hours or so, I might talk about the assignment a little bit in that class period. And for the next 72 hours or so, I said, you can resubmit your same assignment for a little bit of a penalty and improve it. So if they submitted it at first and then they realized as soon as they got to class, oh, I was on the wrong track, then they have a chance to, they say, okay, I'm going to engage with the same material that I just did, but now I'm going to engage with it correctly. And now I'm going to do a better job at this. And this allows students to actually, even my best students made use of this second draft submission, because the first draft is not perfect. So for innovation, one of the ways I tried to build innovation into my class was with the rubrics, as I was mentioning in response to that question. But another way was to use coding sprints. We did, okay, I value innovation. So for their final exam, basically we did the whole cycle of, okay, coming up with an idea, trying to implement something, and then writing it up, and then peer reviewing other people on it, right? So the whole cycle of innovation, we tried to like model what innovation would look like. And then I would grade them on it, on each piece of that, right? So to see how well did you innovate. Okay, so students learn our values as well as our content. And this is my last point for today, and it comes from my experience in Ethiopia, teaching in Ethiopia. And it was to engage cultural assumptions that prevent academic progress. Engage cultural assumptions that prevent academic progress. Huh? There are a lot of cultural assumptions, and maybe as an outsider, as a foreigner, it's easier for me to see what some of those assumptions are. But it's also possible for people living within a culture to be able to say, I see people have this kind of issue, so I'm going to design something to deal with it. For example, I value interactive teaching and classroom interaction, and it took me a while to overcome people's natural inclination to be silent and not say anything because of collectivism in Ethiopia. People would say, "Oh, somebody else will say it. This is, we're all part of the mass." And so, for example, when yeah, there were things that I had to do. It took me 2-3 lectures to figure out how can I get them to interact in my classroom.
They are feeling from other cultures and from other people.
Yes, it could be that. Yes, it might just be that I was different and that kind of thing. But yeah, there are different things at play, possible things at play. I wrote about it in my blog, but I won't go too much into detail. Another thing was another issue that arose was academic honesty. And there were some issues that came up with academic honesty, and I had to deal with them in a way that I thought could fit the culture. The most extreme example of this was with plagiarism. When so in order to, I realized that there was some sorry, not plagiarism or cheating. I guess we could say cheating. In order to prevent cheating, what I felt like I had to do in a collectivist society was not just address people who, oh, you're the one that's cheating and you're the bad guy, but to say, look, you are helping the guy that wants to cheat, and you are making everybody, you're bringing everybody down when you do that. Okay, you're making this an environment where where the professor can't trust that this work is yours. You are creating an environment where that is, yeah, that's not an honest one, and so the professor can't actually gauge how much you're learning, and since it's not available to the professor how much you're learning, you can't improve. You can't figure out how to improve the educational experience. And so in order to address this, I actually used I gave on a final exam, I said, if one person cheats, then that person fails, but everybody else loses 5 points. Everybody else loses 5 points if one person cheats. If everybody does not cheat, then everybody gets an extra 10 points. So then every person has to think, okay, is my cheating worth more than the 10 points that I would have gotten, that everybody would have gotten? Cheat better than helping everyone get the 10 points that we could have all gotten. Okay, so this was an example of how I tried to engage cultural assumptions that I thought were preventing academic progress in that one classroom. Another example is power distance versus personal connection. It's often the case in different societies. In America, you don't have that much power distance between a professor and a student. Students feel like they can just come up and talk to the professor. They can eat in the classroom. They can like talk to their friends. They can chat on their phone with their friends while the professor is talking. In other places, when the professor is there, like you're not, the student is not going to do anything, is going to pay attention, or their mind might be somewhere else, but physically they look like they're paying attention, and they'll respect you, but they might not ask you the questions that they're actually thinking about, and they might not, the problems that are keeping them from learning, they might not actually bring up.
They may not be engaged.
Yeah, they might not be engaged because they see you as just an object. And, oh, you're just the teacher. It's like you're a machine that's giving out education. But what I like to do is to make it clear that, look, this is a personal connection. We are people and we're learning, and we have something to gain from interacting with each other, from relating to each other in a personal way. And so, what is that? Yeah, cooperating with others. And yeah, definitely. And so I tried to make myself, it's not just accessibility, but you have to make yourself accessible to students in order to have personal connection. But this is one of the values that I would say I want to convey in my classroom, is that I care about not just this classroom, but I care about you as a person and about your development. If a student has a family member that dies, it's not just okay, here's the procedures for what you do when a family member dies or something like that. It's like you engage with them at a deeper level, because the teacher-student relationship has potential for really great impact in students. So I hope that with that and with many of the other principles that I've covered today, that you have gotten some things, at least a few things that might be useful to you in your classrooms. And so I want to do one final activity, which is, what will you use? What will you use? Which principles and methods can you immediately apply to your teaching, and how? And which principles and methods will take practice, but you think are worth learning? You haven't tried this before, but you'd like to learn it. You'd like to practice it and do it so that you can do it well. So I'm going to give you 30 seconds here to think about what you want to do. And I hope that this thing comes up. Yes, okay. And so go ahead, and I'll give you 30 seconds to think, and then I'm going to ask you to turn to your neighbor or your group that you were with earlier and share. So I'll give you 30 seconds first. Okay, go ahead and turn to your neighbor, and you can discuss what are some of the things that you would share and put into practice. All right.
Someone said something, because they said here, would you check the online tool?
Looks like we have no response. Looks like it's not, it hasn't registered their comment yet. We're almost done. This is the last. Okay, great. So we have one response here online. I guess setting objectives takes a lot of time. Hopefully each of you does everybody have, raise your hand if you have at least one takeaway that you might be able to use in the future in your teaching. Raise your hand. If you have something that you can apply in your teaching, can you raise your hand? Yes? Two more. Great. Use objects. Yes. Great. Have students understand the material. I'll start to teach asynchronous. Okay. Well, thank you so much for participating today. And for all of the things that you guys have, for joining with me, for being patient with some of the difficulties and with the material. I know it's been a long session today. Thank you for paying attention and for your participation. I'm happy to continue with any questions or things after we adjourn. Thank you for your time.
Thank you
so much.
الحضور حيوصلكم ان شاء الله استبيان. تريدون الاستبيان بشرطوا شهاده الحضور. عشان الحضور هاي يكفوا المحضر ده. Nice meeting you.
Yes, thank you. Thank you for coming.
My name is Mohammed. I am an MSc student of IT. Working on my dissertation. Hopefully, I'm targeting to discuss it in April. I'm working in a new division as you are engaged. This is the energy management. Division started with so I'm studying there. I'm one of the first group who was lucky
To be part of it. Okay.
one of the first group who was selected to start in this division. And I was like, consider myself. Hopefully, thank you very much. I'm a personal friend to Mr. Adil, and I was one of his students because he took one of the syllables. Yeah. I was one of his students. And hopefully we're gonna meet and I'll ask you about you will be with Dr. Adil somewhere in the university. Sure. Pleasure meeting you.
You don't mind. Sorry.